Retail Logistics, from Omni-channel to channel free. I'm joined today by Bill Thayer. He is founder and CEO of Fillogic. Hi, Bill.
Bob, how you doing?
I'm
Good
doing
to be here.
well. Thank you for being with me. Bill, what is wrong with the Omni-channel?
So good old Omni-channel, it's sort of the standard of sort of retail logistics over the last 20, 30 years. But Omni-channel, because it's channel-based, is siloed. When you add silos, you add walls, you add friction, you have the inability for things to be efficient. When you look at Omni-channel, it was built on the world before e-commerce. And when you build all these levels of channels, it's inefficient. And logistics is all about being efficient. And when you look at the growth of e-commerce, and when you look at the sort of the merging of digital and physical, you need a new certain way to basically engage customers. Customers don't think in channels. So one of the things that we feel is really important is the future of logistics, specifically retail logistics, is about channel free. You need to get logistics closer to the consumer where it's faster, more efficient, sustainable.
Interesting you should say that customers don't think in channels, but the whole concept of the Omni-channel was a new way of thinking for retailers, because on one hand they had direct to store, on the other hand they had e-commerce business, and they thought, well, this destroys those two silos, and you're saying that all it really did was lead to silos in and of itself.
Correct, because when you look at what Omni-channel is, when e-commerce first started, it was the shiny object. And then everyone started feeling, okay, we're going to put that in the marketing division. Then it became bigger, you created a separate division.
Right.
Then when you started saying, hey, we now need to use inventory from stores, from wholesale, from drop ships, so now we need to merge it. You've built and compressed all of this level of disruption on top of something that was kind of unstable in the first place, and it's all about inventory. It's not about saying, here's my store inventory, here's my digital inventory, here's my dropship inventory. It's just inventory. And when you ask a customer, so did you buy that from the store or did you buy that from e-commerce? More often than they'll say, I don't know where it came from, nor do I care. Because they want it fast, they want it free, and if they need to return, it better be cheap. Because if it's not, they're gonna go jump all over you on all these social media channels.
Right.
It's all about simplification. Pull out the channels, pull out all this structure, and put in a future state, which is, I think the whole world is using existing infrastructure. The infrastructure's there, just use it differently.
I just want to drill down on this concept a little more. I'm trying to wipe my brain of the concept of a channel, even as I understand that product gets to market in different ways. It goes on pallets in large amounts to a retail distribution center. It goes in eaches online to a customer. So there's different, don't want to call those channels.
Those are modes.
Modes, okay.
Modes of transportation, right? Trailer, container, pallet, box. Part of the problem with Omni-channel is a lot of logistics providers, they were really good at handling containers, pallets, cartons. When you get inside the box, whole different world. Channel free it's an item without a context. An item is being bought by somebody. It doesn't matter what mode it goes through, it's what's the visibility to the inventory, where is it, and can you get it closer to the consumer? And now with sort of the growth of AI and a lot of the supply chain technology, the technology is there. Unfortunately, a lot of the supply chains are built around old infrastructure, right? It's bolted to the floor. You've built massive buildings to support it. And realistically, if you can make better utilization of the data and utilization by priority, right? D2C ships first, stores, wholesale, drop ship. It's a better way to use the inventory because it's no longer by channels, It's just by priority.
Well, paint a picture for me of what a typical distribution center might look like in a non-channel mentality. Is it laid out differently? Is it physically different? Are the people different? Are the processes different? What would it look like?
Well, so the way I looked at it is, there's infrastructure already that's existed in this country for the last 50 to 70 years that is closer to where the consumers are. There's already traffic, and they're very good transportation patterns. Shopping malls, strip centers, you name it. They've just never had the ability to aggregate logistics and the technology to make those buildings operate as an ecosystem. Because one thing I think we've learned from the pandemic is that everybody is willing to collaborate. Me and my company, we're focusing on partnerships. It's not of who's going to run this channel, who's going to own that channel. It's how do we all collaborate more efficiently, take cost out to make it more sustainable and more efficient, but let's use the existing infrastructure. Let's not knock down a forest in the middle of the country somewhere. let's use our existing infrastructure more efficiently.
Are you advocating then for more ship from store inventory management for online fulfillment out of stores?
It's all of the above.
Yeah.
It's curbsides, it's ship from store, it is e-commerce fulfillment from a building that is in a mall that's close to a store. It is using that infrastructure because the process of fulfillment, whether it's D2C, B2B, they're relatively similar. So the issue is, let's not talk about it as it's e-commerce fulfillment or it's ship from store or it's BOPUS, everything. It's a process that is going to a different connection to a person. That's not a channel. It's a process. Free your mind, let it make it much easier just from the perspective of focus on the process and not worry about channels. Channels are just built by infrastructure and technology and consultants for many, many years to say, this is the way it's done. It's not. Customers moved on.
Does this give you better visibility of inventory throughout the system?
Better visibility, much faster turns, better utilization of inventory for returns, reverse logistics, sustainable recycling of inventory. All of it is being able to say, in the mode of transportation, whether it's forward or reverse, if you can tighten that window and tighten that time, it means that you're not having inventory sitting that is not outside of a customer's hands, or if it is something that's being returned, you're making it available for sale.
But for instance, if I'm shopping online and I want to buy an object, it's going to tell me whether or not, theoretically, it's going to tell me correctly whether or not they have that object in stock, or how many of those objects they have in stock. Will it be easier, will it be more accurate now because of this new way of looking at inventory, standing inventory?
Yeah, absolutely, because when you look at channel free, it's not about, hey, where is my inventory in a specific retail store? You could have a brand that is shared across multiple different retailers, and from a collaborative perspective, if you're sharing that brand, there's the ability, there's channels, or there is integrations with various third-party tools that can provide visibility to that inventory. It's how do you make that inventory work more efficiently? We're just at very early stages of this because everybody's been building massive distribution centers.
Yeah, which are still needed to a certain extent, but you also have the smaller regional, the micro fulfillment centers, you need them all.
Well, and that's what a mall is. When you think about what's happening in a retail center, you're having retail store personnel do a lot of those fulfillment tasks that are happening in smaller distribution centers, and larger distribution centers don't look at it as, okay, we have a dark store or a store that just does fulfillment. They need to do all of the above, because when you're able to do that, your staffs are more efficient, your inventory is more efficient, your turn, you name it. We just need to get away from the old infrastructure. And back on your point about distribution centers, we have way too much capacity. We overbuilt capacity during the pandemic. Same way that retailers misread e-commerce growth during the pandemic. We had 10 years of growth in 18 months. A lot of retailers, smart retailers said, we're going to build this infrastructure because it's always going to be like this.
Yeah, and
they were wrong.
Were we keeping excess inventory because we thought, well, we need this for online, we need this for direct to store, stuff like that, when we could have just had one source of inventory for it all and less of it?
Focus on inventory in your retail locations that retailers already have, and in many cases use that infrastructure either for digitally native brands to support it, use the ecosystem that is retail centers to get inventory close to the consumer, rapidly fulfill them, whether it's local nodes that support a specific region, but definitely don't keep building these massive buildings because you've changed the problem. You used to have a store that did fulfillment, but now you have a dark store, which is warehouse fulfillment, that yes, it's better pricing and better metrics for most people. But when you look at what's happening in the real estate, industrial real estate's never been more expensive. Everybody's fighting over labor. And when you look at it from the perspective, that labor cost, when you look at these big corporate parks, big retail distribution centers, but what's there? The main parcel carriers. The only infrastructure that works for is the parcel carriers because they plop their buildings there. That's where those guys get those rates. But e-commerce at scale is not cheap. The best channel where people can market, engage customers is stores. So let's stop talking about channels. It's stuff. How do you get stuff into the hands of people that want their stuff efficiently?
But if you're fulfilling items from a store, are you picking from the retail shelves, or do you have a separate setup in the back for that specifically?
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above, because everybody is in a different step on their channel-free logistics journey.
Uh-huh.
We call it channel-free logistics, but everybody's already doing it because they've realized, well, hey, that big building that I was going to build 6 months ago, can't afford it.
Yeah.
The technology that supported my company can't afford that either. So what do you have to do? It's collaboration, it's partnership, is utilizing better infrastructure sort of that's already existing. It's kind of an aha moment.
Interesting. The very, very early days of e-commerce, maybe you had absolutely separate facilities handling to store and to a retail, to a e-commerce consumer. Step 2 was to put it all in the same facility, but have different sections of the facility for those two things.
Correct.
You're
Channels.
saying here we are at step 3, where it's just all one big source.
Stuff. You think about it this way. I started my career at Macy's, and we had this thing called mail and phone.
Mm-hmm.
It was before the internet. Yes, I just aged myself out. But when you think about that perspective, mail and phone was phone orders that was fulfilled from stores.
Yeah.
And you were looking at inventory, data that was like a week old, but you'd still fulfill orders. As the rise of e-commerce, Macy's pulled all of that mail and phone infrastructure out of the stores.
Mm-hmm.
And now they put it back in. So when you think about it, we had the idea for how it should work, but then we screwed it up because we started thinking about channels because retailers would say, hey, I'm a retailer, I'm going to dictate to how customers are going to shop.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that in the growth of Amazon in the early 2000s that wasn't the case, but then we got a big punch in the face during COVID, and everybody realizes that you've got to be faster, you got to be more efficient. Look at what's happened in the last mile. All of this growth in last mile carriers, they've all been destroyed because their unit economics don't work. Right? They're building something new.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for washing that whole channel conception out of my brain. New paradigm shift, and I really appreciate that.
Did it help?
I'm working on it.
Good.
But I'd like to take a moment to ask you to tell me a little bit about Fillogic specifically. Where do you guys fit in the world of channel-free logistics?
Aha, well, thank you for asking. So Fillogic is a local market logistics provider. So what we do is we take underutilized retail locations and back of the house locations in shopping malls and deploy the technology and the operations to help mall-based retailers and digital native brands operate more efficiently as an ecosystem. We're B2B logistics infrastructure, but we're agnostic. We're mall owner, retailer, carrier, agnostic because we want to work with everybody because the future of retail logistics is collaborative, it's partnership based, and it's all about saying, we have a problem because we're overstored in the US. Great, let's continue to deploy the logistics infrastructure because that channel-free idea that we espouse, what's so important about that is it's faster, more efficient, and sustainable. Less touches, less moves. We're doing a lot of work with recycled containers. There's so much opportunity to make logistics the driver of sustainability, and that I think is one of the most important pieces of channel-free logistics. You drop the silos, you drop all of the chaff that's going on, and you can make things faster, more efficient, and sustainable.
Bill, thanks again for your insights. I really
pleasure.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Bill Thayer of Fillogic. Thank you very much for watching.